For 200,000 years, our species has walked this earth. We tell ourselves a simple, comforting story of our past. A linear march of progress, from the first stone tools to the gleaming towers of our modern world. It is a tale of slow, steady awakening, of humanity gradually mastering its environment and finally reaching for the stars. This story is the foundation of our identity, the map by which we navigate our present and chart our future. But what if this map is wrong? What if the known world is just one island in a vast, forgotten ocean of time, and our history is not a beginning, but a recovery? What if our recorded history is a book with its first, most important chapter violently torn out? We are left with fragments, whispers of a different time before our own. These whispers are not found in our libraries or archives, but are buried deep within the Earth itself, locked away in the planet's oldest and most remote places. They are encoded in the silent layers of polar ice, submerged beneath the crushing pressure of the deep ocean, and echoed in the uncanny similarities of our most ancient myths. To listen to them is to question everything we think we know about who we are and where we came from. Imagine a library of time, its pages made of ice, stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. Every layer of snow that falls on our planet's poles captures a snapshot of the world as it was. The dust from distant deserts, the pollen of long-extinct forests, and the very air our ancestors breathed. Scientists drill into this frozen archive, pulling up cores that allow us to read the planet's autobiography. But in this story written in ice, there are chapters that speak of sudden, unimaginable violence, of planetary climates shifting not over millennia, but in less than a human lifetime, a sign of a shock to the entire global system. Now imagine a world drowned beneath the waves. At the end of the last ice age, the great continental ice sheets melted, and the sea level rose by 400 feet. This was not a gentle tide, but a world-altering deluge that swallowed coastlines and consumed entire landmasses the size of continents. What cities, what monuments, what evidence of a forgotten people might lie preserved in the cold, dark abyss? We send our robotic explorers into the crushing depths, scanning the seabed for anomalies, and what they are beginning to find are not just natural rock formations, but the haunting geometry of artificial structures, waiting in a world without light. Our ancestors were obsessed with the stars, building colossal stone observatories to track the slow, patient dance of the cosmos with a precision that should have been impossible. We tell ourselves they were creating calendars for farming or navigating the seas. But what if they were watching the heavens for a different reason? What if their gaze was not one of innocent wonder, but of profound fear, born from a cultural memory of a time when the sky fell? What if they were not simply charting the seasons, but keeping watch for the return of a terror that had visited their world before? Across the globe, from the jungles of South America to the plains of Mesopotamia, our ancestors told the same stories. They spoke of a golden age of gods and heroes, a paradise lost. They recounted a great flood that wiped the world clean, sparing only a handful of survivors who carried the seeds of a new humanity. And they described wise, mysterious teachers who arrived after the deluge to bring back the arts of civilization. Are these merely fables, the product of primitive imagination? Or are they the fragmented, traumatized memories of a single, shared global event that scarred the collective psyche of our species? When we connect these disparate threads, the climatic trauma in the ice, the drowned structures in the sea, the fearful astronomy of the ancients, and the universal myths of destruction and renewal, a new and startling picture begins to emerge. It is the ghost of another story, a prehistory that we have long forgotten. This story suggests the existence of a precursor civilization, one that possessed a sophisticated and profound knowledge of the planet and its cycles. They were not primitive hunter-gatherers, but a people who had reached a level of advancement that we are only just beginning to comprehend. This lost world did not simply fade away. It was erased in a moment of unimaginable violence, a cataclysm that burned the air, boiled the seas, and shook the very foundations of the earth. This event is the Great Wall in our timeline, the barrier that separates their age from ours. It is the moment the slate was wiped clean, plunging the world into a dark age of chaos and amnesia, forcing the scattered, traumatized survivors to begin again from almost nothing. Our civilization did not rise from a void. It was built upon the ashes of theirs. The evidence for such a catastrophe is overwhelming, written into the geological record for anyone willing to see it. But this leads us to the most unsettling question of all. Was this global cataclysm merely a random cosmic accident, a stray comet striking at the worst possible time? Or was it something more? As we stand on the precipice of our own technological apotheosis, creating powers that can reshape the planet, we must consider a more terrifying possibility: that the Great Destruction was not an accident, but a deliberate act. Was it a cosmic war, an attack from an external force? Or was it a self-inflicted wound, a civilization so powerful it chose to reset itself, to prevent a future it could no longer control? This investigation is a search for that missing first chapter of the human story. We will follow the whispers, decode the fragments, and venture to the edge of what is known to confront the nature of this great reset. This is the story of a world that existed before us, and the haunting possibility that its end was our engineered beginning. To understand the cataclysm, we must first picture the world it destroyed. 13,000 years ago, our planet was on the cusp of a great thaw. The colossal ice sheets that had locked down the northern hemisphere for millennia were in retreat, and life was exploding in its wake. This was a world of giants, a Pleistocene Serengeti teeming with herds of woolly mammoths, mastodons, and giant ground sloths. Saber-toothed cats and dire wolves hunted across vast grasslands, and in North America, a sophisticated people known as the Clovis culture had perfected the art of hunting these magnificent beasts. Our ancestors lived in this world, a world that was wild, vibrant, and about to end. The end was not gradual. It was a sharp, brutal line drawn across geological time, a planetary scar that geologists can point to in the soil. Across North America, and now discovered on continents around the globe, there exists a thin, dark layer of Earth known as the black mat. Below this line, the world is rich with the fossils of megafauna and the elegant spear points of the Clovis people. But directly within and above this layer, the giants are gone. The tools vanish. It is a boundary of extinction, a tombstone for an entire ecosystem. This black mat is a funeral shroud, woven from soot, charcoal, and the carbon of a world set ablaze. When you hold a piece of it in your hand, you are holding the remnants of a global firestorm. It is consistently dated to the same moment in time, approximately 12,800 years ago, marking the precise onset of a dramatic and mysterious climatic downturn known as the Younger Dryas. For decades, scientists debated what could have caused such a sudden and devastating event. The answer, it turns out, was not on Earth but came from the sky, hidden within the black mat itself. The investigation into this ancient crime scene begins at the microscopic level. Within the dark confines of the mat, scientists discovered something extraordinary: a dense concentration of nanodiamonds. These are not the gems of jewelry, but microscopic crystals that can only be formed under the kind of extreme temperature and pressure generated by a high-velocity cosmic impact. Like a celestial fingerprint left at the scene, these tiny diamonds are the unmistakable signature of an extraterrestrial object detonating in Earth's atmosphere or striking its surface. They are the first clue that this was no ordinary fire. The evidence continues to build. Alongside the nanodiamonds, the black mat is filled with countless magnetic microspherules. These are tiny, metallic orbs, smaller than a grain of sand, that formed as rock and metal were vaporized by unimaginable heat and then cooled rapidly as they rained down through the atmosphere. They are the crystallized droplets of a sky on fire, a rain of molten material that fell across an entire hemisphere. The sheer abundance of these spherules speaks to an event of almost incomprehensible scale, one that turned the very ground beneath our ancestors' feet into a shooting gallery. But the definitive smoking gun is chemical. Laced throughout the black mat is a significant spike in the element iridium. Iridium is exceptionally rare in Earth's crust, but it is abundant in cosmic objects like asteroids and comets. Its presence was the key evidence that proved a cosmic impact was responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. To find another iridium spike, marking another mass extinction, but this time only 12,800 years in our past, is a chilling revelation. It proves, beyond a reasonable doubt, that our more recent ancestors witnessed an event of the same nature, if not the same scale. From these clues, a terrifying picture of the event itself emerges. A giant comet, perhaps hundreds of kilometers wide, fragmented as it entered the inner solar system. Earth's orbit carried it directly through this debris field of ice and rock. Multiple fragments, some over a kilometer in diameter, slammed into the North American ice sheet and surrounding oceans, while a swarm of smaller pieces detonated in the air. The resulting airburst and shockwave ignited continent-spanning wildfires, creating a firestorm that generated the immense quantities of soot and carbon found in the black mat. The world was set on fire. Yet this was an event of profound paradoxes, for the fire was followed immediately by ice. The immense impact on the Laurentide ice sheet vaporized billions of tons of water, while the wildfires threw a thick veil of smoke and ash into the upper atmosphere. This shroud blocked the sun's light, plunging the northern hemisphere into a sudden and catastrophic winter. The great thaw that had been underway was instantly reversed. Average temperatures plummeted, in some regions by as much as 15 degrees Celsius, heralding the beginning of the Younger Dryas, a 1,000-year return to the harshest conditions of the Ice Age. The biological cost was absolute. Over 75% of North and South America's large animal species were wiped out in a geological instant. Mammoths, mastodons, camels, horses, and their predators all vanished forever. The Clovis people, whose culture was built around hunting these giants, disappeared from the archaeological record at the exact same time. It was a biological reset, an annihilation that cleared the board of its largest and most dominant players, leaving behind a traumatized and empty landscape for the few human survivors to navigate. The science is clear. A cosmic impact caused a planetary cataclysm that triggered a mass extinction and a 1,000-year ice age. The evidence is etched into the very soil of our planet. But while science can tell us what happened, it falls silent when we ask why. Was this truly a one-in-a-million-year accident, a case of our planet simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or does the timing, so close to the dawn of our own civilization, suggest something more? We are left to wonder if this planetary fire and ice was just a random act of nature, or the deliberate opening salvo of the Great Reset. The world emerging from the Younger Dryas was, according to our textbooks, an empty stage. The great beasts were gone, and humanity was reduced to scattered bands of hunter-gatherers, armed with little more than stone and wood. The official story states that for thousands of years, we lived in this primitive state before the slow, arduous invention of agriculture gave rise to the first villages and eventually the first cities. But deep in the hills of southern Turkey, a discovery was made that threatens to tear this comfortable narrative to shreds. It is a place that should not exist, a structure built 10,000 years before the pyramids, by people who supposedly had no knowledge of architecture, engineering, or complex society. This place is called Göbekli Tepe. It is not a village or a settlement, but a vast ceremonial center, a complex of massive, T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in concentric circles. Some of these monoliths stand nearly 20 feet tall and weigh up to 20 tons, quarried and moved from miles away. They are not crude blocks of stone. They are elegantly carved with breathtakingly detailed reliefs of animals. Lions, boars, foxes, and strange, menacing birds march across their surfaces, alongside abstract symbols whose meanings are lost to time. It is the world's first known temple, and its builders were, by all accounts, people of the Stone Age. The existence of Göbekli Tepe presents us with a profound paradox. It is like finding a jet engine in a medieval castle. To build such a site requires a level of organization, planning, and specialized labor that we did not believe was possible for hunter-gatherer societies. Who fed the hundreds of workers? Who were the master stonemasons, the engineers, the architects? The conventional timeline of human history has no room for them. It begs the question, who builds a cathedral before they have even learned to build a house? Unless, of course, the knowledge of how to do it was not invented here but remembered. This was not just a temple, it was an observatory. Many of its great pillars are aligned with uncanny precision to specific points on the horizon, marking the rising and setting of stars. But they were not tracking just any stars. The alignments at Göbekli Tepe appear to be engineered to track the slow, 26,000-year cycle known as the precession of the equinoxes. This is the subtle wobble of the Earth's axis as it spins, a celestial clock of immense scale. To know of precession requires centuries, if not millennia, of continuous and precise observation. How did supposed primitives possess such advanced astronomical knowledge? One pillar in particular, known as Pillar 43, may hold the key. It is covered in carvings that appear to be more than just pictures of animals. Some researchers have interpreted them as a date stamp, a celestial map of the sky at a very specific moment in time. The animals, a scorpion, a vulture, a bird, correspond to constellations, and their arrangement pinpoints a date around 12,900 years ago, the exact time the Younger Dryas Cataclysm began. This monument was not just built by the survivors of the catastrophe. It may have been built to commemorate it, a message carved in stone and aimed at the deep future. This sophisticated astronomical knowledge was not isolated to Göbekli Tepe. Across the world, we find a pattern of this lost science encoded in the most ancient structures. The pyramids of Giza in Egypt are perfectly aligned to the cardinal points and seem to mirror the stars of Orion's belt, not as they appeared when the pyramids were supposedly built, but as they appeared thousands of years earlier. The mysterious megaliths of Stonehenge in England function as a complex astronomical calculator. These sites, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, all seem to speak the same lost language of the stars, a language focused on this deep cycle of precession. Perhaps this knowledge was a critical inheritance, the most important piece of information the survivors could pass on. By building these great sky clocks, they were not just mapping the heavens. They were trying to warn us. They were showing us the mechanism of the cosmos, a cycle that, for them, had culminated in global destruction. This was their desperate attempt to create a message in a bottle, to ensure that the memory of the great cataclysm and its celestial cause would not be entirely forgotten by the generations who came after. While the builders of Göbekli Tepe were preserving this legacy in stone, other survivors were preserving it in story. All across the world, from every inhabited continent, we find the same fundamental myth, a global flood that wiped out a sinful or arrogant world. In Mesopotamia, the hero Ziusudra is warned by a god to build a great boat to survive the deluge. In India, Manu is told by Vishnu to do the same. In the Americas, the myths speak of a great wave that remade the world. And in the Bible, Noah fills his ark as the heavens open. For centuries, we have dismissed these stories as religious fables or local flood myths exaggerated over time. But their shocking consistency, their global distribution, and their shared narrative elements, a divine warning, a chosen survivor, the preservation of life and knowledge, and the world reborn point to a different conclusion. These are not separate myths. They are the fragmented, refracted memories of a single, real, historical event. They are the human story of the end of the Younger Dryas, when the ice dams holding back continents of meltwater finally burst and the sea levels rose catastrophically. These are not the ruins of the beginning of civilization, but the echoes of the end of one. Göbekli Tepe is a memorial built by the traumatized survivors, a testament to the world they lost. The sophisticated astronomical knowledge found in ancient sites around the globe is the key piece of their science they fought to preserve. And the flood myths are their eyewitness accounts, passed down through countless generations. When we look at these ruins and listen to these stories, we are not witnessing humanity's first, faltering steps out of the dark, but rather the faint, flickering embers of a brilliant fire that was almost completely extinguished. Let us pause and take stock of what the evidence has shown us. We have a scientifically verified planetary catastrophe, a cosmic impact event that triggered a global winter and a mass extinction 12,800 years ago. We have archaeological ruins like Göbekli Tepe, which demonstrate a sophisticated knowledge of engineering and astronomy thousands of years before it should have been possible. And we have a bedrock of global myths that all tell the same story of a drowned world and the rebirth of humanity. The facts refuse to align with our accepted history. It is an equation with a missing variable. When faced with such profound contradictions, we have two choices. We can ignore the anomalies, dismissing them as coincidences or misinterpretations in order to preserve our comfortable story. Or we can follow the evidence where it leads, no matter how unsettling the destination. If we choose the latter, we are forced to consider a radical, new hypothesis that unites the geological, archaeological, and mythological evidence into a single, cohesive narrative. This is the hypothesis of the Great Reset. It is the idea that the Cataclysm was not an accident. This hypothesis proposes that the destruction of the precursor world was a deliberate, targeted event designed to wipe the planetary slate clean. This was not simply a chaotic extinction, but an engineered apocalypse. Think of it not as a natural disaster, but as a controlled demolition on a planetary scale. It was a reset button, pushed with immense force, to halt the trajectory of a civilization, erase its memory, and force life to begin again from a more primitive state. The question that immediately follows is one of cosmic significance. Who or what had the motive and the means to push it? The first possibility is perhaps the most terrifying. The Great Reset was an act of external intervention, done to them. In this scenario, the precursor civilization had crossed a line, violated a cosmic law, or developed a capacity that was deemed too dangerous to be allowed to flourish. Some higher intelligence, whether a single entity or a collective of advanced civilizations, may act as a kind of galactic immune system. They may watch for emerging species that show signs of becoming a threat, not just to themselves or their planet, but to a wider cosmic ecology. Our precursors may have been identified as such a threat. What could they have done to warrant such a verdict? Perhaps they had unlocked the secrets of the atom and were on a path of self-destruction that threatened to permanently poison the biosphere. Perhaps their technological advancement had led to a runaway artificial intelligence that was consuming their world. Or perhaps they were on the verge of a breakthrough in physics, one that could destabilize spacetime itself or open doorways to other realities, a power too great for an adolescent species to wield. In this view, the Cataclysm was a quarantine, a brutal act of cosmic pruning to prevent a planetary infection from spreading. But there is a second possibility, one that is in many ways even more profound and unsettling. The Great Reset was not an external act, but an internal one. It was a choice made by them. This is the ultimate paradox. A civilization so advanced that it possessed the wisdom and the power to orchestrate its own demise. Why would any civilization commit suicide on such a scale? The motives here move from cosmic warfare to deep, philosophical sacrifice. It's a decision that speaks to a level of foresight and self-awareness we can barely imagine. Imagine a civilization that had mapped its own future and saw an inevitable dead end. Perhaps they saw that their industrial and technological path, for all its wonders, would lead to the irreversible destruction of the planet's fragile biosphere. In a final, desperate act of planetary stewardship, they chose to sacrifice themselves to save life itself, engineering a reset that would give a future species, us, a chance to walk a different path. They became the antibodies, destroying their own civilization to save the larger organism of the planet. Alternatively, their motive may have been less ecological and more existential. They may have reached a technological singularity that they could no longer control, unleashing a power that they had to extinguish at any cost. Or perhaps they achieved a kind of collective enlightenment, a spiritual apotheosis that allowed them to transcend the physical world. In this final act, they may have dismantled their own material civilization as one might shed a cocoon, setting the stage for the next cycle of consciousness to begin its journey, unburdened by the artifacts of the old world. How could such a reset be engineered to look like a natural disaster? A civilization capable of building Göbekli Tepe and mapping the 26,000-year precessional cycle would have possessed a deep understanding of celestial mechanics. It is not a great leap to suggest they could also manipulate them. Redirecting a comet or a series of comets to strike a precise location on the planet, like the North American ice sheet, would be the most effective way to trigger a global winter and a sea level rise without leaving behind the overt signature of an artificial weapon. It is the perfect crime. So we are left with two scenarios, each one fundamentally reshaping our place in the universe. In one, we are the children of a civilization deemed too dangerous to exist, living in the shadow of a cosmic law we do not understand. In the other, we are the inheritors of a planet saved by the ultimate sacrifice, or the beneficiaries of a civilization that simply moved on. The evidence for the cataclysm is written in stone and ice. The hypothesis of a deliberate reset is what gives that evidence meaning. It transforms a random tragedy into an event of profound and terrifying purpose. If our civilization is a fire, it was not kindled from a single spark in the darkness. It was reignited from the dying embers of a much older, grander flame. The survivors of the Younger Dryas cataclysm were not a homogeneous group. They were a fractured collection of humanity, consisting of our distant, primitive ancestors who endured through sheer resilience, and another, much smaller group, the remnants of the precursor civilization itself. These were the traumatized scientists, engineers, and philosophers of a drowned world. They were the keepers of the flame, and their burden was to find a way to pass it on. This is where myth and history begin to blur. From every corner of the post-cataclysmic world, the legends of our fledgling cultures tell a strangely consistent story. After the Great Flood or Fire, when humanity was living in a state of savagery, mysterious figures arrived. They were described as culture-bearers, teachers, and lawgivers, bringing with them the essential tools for a new beginning. They taught agriculture and architecture, writing and mathematics, astronomy and ethics. Our ancestors revered them as gods. But what if they were simply men and women, the last survivors of a lost age, undertaking a desperate mission? In ancient Mesopotamia, legends spoke of Oannes, a being who emerged from the Persian Gulf. He was described as having the body of a fish, but with a human head and feet beneath. By day, he would teach humanity the arts and sciences, and by night, he would return to the sea. In Mesoamerica, the deity Quetzalcoatl arrived from the east, a pale-skinned, bearded figure who taught the people everything from the calendar to the art of smithing. In the Andes, Viracocha walked the land after the flood, performing miracles and laying the foundations of civilization. These are not separate gods. They are the job description of a single, coordinated effort. Their mission was not to rule, but to restart. They were not creating a new world from scratch. They were uploading a civilization starter pack to the shell-shocked minds of primitive humanity. They were the faculty of a bankrupt university, trying to preserve the core curriculum before the library burned to the ground. They knew that a full recovery could take millennia, but they could plant the seeds. They introduced high-yield grains, taught the principles of irrigation, established codes of law, and, most importantly, they pointed humanity's eyes back to the stars, re-establishing the cosmic clock that had governed their own lost world. This deliberate transfer of knowledge provides a powerful solution to one of archaeology's greatest puzzles: the Neolithic Revolution. The sudden, near-simultaneous appearance of agriculture in several unrelated parts of the world has always been difficult to explain as a purely natural development. But it makes perfect sense if it was an introduced technology. The survivors, possessing a complete botanical and ecological library from their previous world, would have known exactly which plants to cultivate and how to domesticate animals. They were not discovering farming. They were teaching it, kickstarting a global recovery program. And what of the more esoteric knowledge they imparted? Their obsessive focus on the precession of the equinoxes, a cycle irrelevant to farming or daily survival, suddenly becomes clear. It was the most important lesson they could teach. This celestial cycle was tied to the very mechanism of the cataclysm that destroyed their world. By encoding this knowledge into monuments and myths, they were giving us more than a calendar. They were giving us a warning system. They were telling us that history is governed by vast cosmic cycles, and that the sky which gives us life can also bring destruction. We must now take one final, speculative leap into the very blueprint of our own existence. Was this guidance purely educational, or was it more direct? The myths are filled with stories of the gods, taking mortal partners and producing a lineage of semi-divine heroes and kings. Is it possible that the survivors, seeing humanity's slow evolutionary path, decided to accelerate it? Did they interbreed with our primitive ancestors, merging their own genetic inheritance with the raw, resilient stock of Ice Age humanity? This is the most shocking possibility, that the great leap forward in human cognition was not just inspired but sired. This reframes the entire concept of the gods of the ancient world. They were not supernatural beings from another dimension. They were flesh and blood humans from another time, armed with a level of technology that would have been indistinguishable from magic to our ancestors. A simple aircraft would be a celestial chariot. A laser-based cutting tool would be a lightning bolt from the heavens. Genetic engineering would be the power to create life itself. Their knowledge was their divinity. Their technology was their power. Their survival was our miracle. If this is true, then their legacy is not just carved in stone or written in myth. It is encoded in our DNA. We are a species with a profound case of amnesia, dimly aware of a majestic inheritance we cannot quite grasp. We are orphans of a lost world, haunted by a greatness we feel in our bones, but cannot see in our history books. This inherited knowledge drives our relentless curiosity, our innate need to explore, build, and understand the cosmos. The mission of the survivors was to ensure that consciousness itself would continue on this planet. Their success is written in every city we build and every star we gaze upon, as we, the inheritors, unknowingly continue their ancient journey. We have journeyed to the edge of recorded time, through a world of fire and ice, to the footsteps of a lost civilization. We have followed a trail of evidence written in geology, archaeology, and myth. This trail leads to a conclusion so profound it threatens to redefine our place in the universe. That we are not the first. That another human story, one of high science and deep wisdom, was told on this planet, only to be erased in a cataclysmic event known as the Great Reset. But the ultimate purpose of this journey is not to simply uncover a lost past. It is to hold up a mirror to our own present. The story of a Great Reset is more than a historical hypothesis. It is a profound and urgent warning. As our own civilization accelerates at a breathtaking pace, we see uncanny echoes of the very powers that a precursor civilization may have once wielded. The same triumphs that define our modern world may also be forging the instruments of our own potential downfall. The ghost of their world haunts our own, forcing us to confront the most important question of all. Are we unknowingly walking in their footsteps, down the same path to oblivion? Consider our achievements. We have split the atom, unlocking the creative and destructive power of the stars themselves, and for decades we have lived with the capacity to annihilate ourselves in a flash of nuclear fire. We are now summoning intelligent spirits from silicon and light, creating artificial minds whose potential we cannot fathom and whose alignment with our own values is not guaranteed. We are learning to rewrite the very source code of life, seizing the reins of evolution without a map for the road ahead. We are altering the chemistry of our planet's atmosphere, changing the breath and temperature of the world that sustains us. Each of these is a Promethean act, a moment where we seize the fire of the gods, and each carries the shadow of a potential consequence. The precursors may have faced these same thresholds. Did their mastery of energy lead to a weapon that sterilized their world? Did their artificial intelligences decide that their creators were the true threat? Did their geological engineering, meant to stabilize their climate, trigger the very cataclysm that destroyed them? Their ruins are a silent testament to the fact that for every power, there is a price. This leads us to the haunting concept of a great filter, the idea that certain stages of technological development are so inherently dangerous that few, if any, civilizations can survive passing through them. Perhaps the reset was not a singular event, but a cyclical one. Perhaps consciousness, once it reaches a certain level of planetary influence, inevitably triggers a corrective response from the cosmos or from itself. It may be a natural law, a recurring pattern where technological hubris is met with planetary collapse, forcing a reset so that life, in a more humble form, can continue. Are we, then, simply living in another iteration of this cycle? Are our great cities destined to become the submerged ruins of a future epoch? Are our scientific achievements fated to become the confused myths of the next humanity? It is a terrifying thought that our story may already be written, that we are merely actors in a cosmic drama that has played out countless times before on this world and perhaps on millions of others across the galaxy. But there is one crucial difference between our time and theirs. We have their warning. They were the first to walk this path, and they fell into an abyss they may not have seen coming. But we are not walking it blind. Their memory, however faint, has survived. It has come down to us as whispers in stone, as echoes in myth, as anomalies in the soil. We are the first generation in this new cycle to be able to read these warnings, to piece together the ghost of their story. We know that a reset is possible. We know what it looks like. We have found the black box of their crashed civilization. This knowledge presents us with the ultimate choice. It is a burden of awareness that no previous generation has had to carry. We can choose to ignore the warnings, to dismiss them as fantasy, and to continue our current trajectory with blind optimism, trusting that our ingenuity will solve any problem we create. This is the path of hubris, the path they may have taken. Or we can choose to learn from their fall. We can choose to temper our ambition with wisdom, our progress with precaution, and our power with humility. The ultimate question is not whether they existed. The evidence increasingly suggests they did. The ultimate question is whether we are doomed to repeat their fate. Can we be the first iteration of humanity on this planet to successfully navigate the Great Filter? Can we, armed with the faint memory of a world that was lost, be the first to break the cycle? Can we build a civilization that is not only intelligent but wise? One that learns to live in balance with its planet and with the immense powers it has unlocked. As we gaze out at our world from the cold silence of space, we see no borders, no ideologies, only a single, fragile, living organism. This is the perspective they may have had. The choice is ours. The story of our future is not yet written. We are the authors, and the ghosts of a forgotten world are our silent collaborators, urging us to choose a different ending. Our survival and the continuation of consciousness on this planet may depend entirely on our ability to listen.